Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. We are back again with another PWCC/Fanatics weekly review where I go through the top 100 soccer items auction off this week. As always, if you enjoy these episodes, do make sure to leave a like. I'd appreciate it greatly. Helps me, helps the channel. With that said though, let's go ahead and get on over there. This week's starting at $174. I've made the screen a little bit smaller, at least my webcam, to try to stay out of the frame and pricing of all this going on above us. Now, $174 here on this Rivaldo out of 50 NT from 2018. I thought that this was just an interesting price to see given sort of the Topps Dynasty era that we're in now and the high-end pricing for some of these high-end autos of modern guys. A Rivaldo on-card from 2018 when on-card was a lot less prominent doesn't get too much money, at least compared to what I would expect based on what we see generally. This 66 Franz Beckenbauer, I gave it a quick peek whenever I was going through this the first time. This was actually double any recent sale, which was kind of surprising. Now, of course, before that, before the low prices that were around 80 to 90 bucks, it was higher, so it's jumped back a bit, at least at this sale. Pop 1 to 7, none higher, does have a few legends in here if you dig a little deeper. 62 Idemar Pele, PSA 1, we see these a fair bit, but gets 200 bucks there. We have the floating heads here with the 58 Titulares. This has Didi Garincha, and it's a PSA 4, goes for 186. We have a Holland PSA 10 Finest, along with a Lewandowski PSA 9 from 2010. This is a second year Pop 1 of 1, none higher. Feels fairly strong to me. I know that it's a Pop 1 of 1, none higher, but not many of these are graded, and you don't see them all that often, more so because people aren't really hunting them, grading them, sending them in, all that good stuff, not because, you know, it's not out there. Of course it is. The rookies are fairly plentiful, and when you compare to, like, you know, rookie other great players from pre-modern, I think this is a pretty good price. Like a PSA 9 Messi Este second year, I don't know the comps off the top of my head, but generally based on other things I see, I would imagine 300-400, maybe a little bit more, but not a crazy multiple over this Lewandowski. This Ronaldo from 2003, I've never seen this. I don't know what that is, to be honest, but gets 192, a caricature Manchester United second year, not really, you know, my thing. But then we have a 63 Dino Zoff PSA 7. Looked this one up just because I was interested. You don't see that many high-grade Zoffs. This was the lowest of the bunch, 192 on this one, half the price of a 372 sale, although this is Velita back. Both of these are Velita back, so that's very important to note. Harder to really get a comp, at least for the time being, since not many high grades of this have gone. The only real comparable sale was a PSA 6 a year ago that did 147, so this does 200. Not a huge multiple, so seemingly a cheap entry price, not an overpay, at least compared to comps of past. Next to we have a 68 Bergman Beckenbauer, goes for 198. These actually, I mean, this year in particular looks very good. I like the auto as well. Beckenbauer, of course, does have a good amount of autos out there, so it's not particularly rare. Above that, we have a PSA 10 Messi from 2010 Panini FC Barcelona autographs. It goes for 204. We've been seeing a good amount of those go as of late. Next to we have a Christian Pulisic holographic Donruss, goes for 210. This was at least good compared to some of the sales earlier this year. During the boom, of course, this was a much bigger card. I would say generally refractors, hollows, a lot of those types of cards haven't done that well. People have typically flocked more for the numbered stuff, which seems to make sense to me at least. Next to it, we have a 2023 Lamine Yamal PSA 7-8, which, you know, seemingly not that great. We have seen some 9-10s go for, you know, around 500, so this got a pretty decent discount. If this is a card that you want at some point, I would say that it is going to be doable. I mean, assuming Lamine Yamal becomes the thing everyone thinks he will be, he'll be signing for a long time. These cards are fairly plentiful. I mean, 210 doesn't strike me as an egregious overpay. It's kind of a fun card, don't get me wrong, but fun to see it. And, you know, honestly, as much as I talk about how Lamine Yamal might be overhyped, and probably is, let's be honest, at least in the card world, in the sense that, you know, there's a ton of demand right now for his cards, but at the end of the day, no matter how much demand there is, these companies can print a ton of supply, so it's going to be met. The fever pitch demand will be met in some regard. That's more so my worry. In regard to the player, you know, playing amazing, doing great things, and it's fun to have that sort of player in soccer. Not that, honestly, we're that low on them. We had Haaland, we had Mbappe, and we thought that those were sort of going to be the guys. We had Vinny, who we thought was going to win the Ballon d'Or, but apparently not. Nonetheless, you know, adding another one to the rookie sheet is not a bad thing. Above that, I'm not a big upper deck MLS early 2000s guy. It's just not my era. But this Alexi Lalas promo from 97 gets 216. Couldn't find any comps on the promos. I think it's just him and Valderrama, but that got a huge number and about as high as any Alexi Lalas has. 97 upper deck, at least from my understanding, is the first upper deck MLS release. It's got a few cards in there that can warrant a decent premium if it's sort of MLS/USMNT Legends. And this one does get a good price, $216 there. Next to it, this one, I'm not so much this card in particular, but what we'll see here in a second. I don't know what's going on. $216 on a PSA 5 Aquarella sort of makes sense to me, generally based on the prices that have been out there. I know that 2s and 3s are, anywhere from $40 to $75, so a 5 being $216 makes sense. But as we'll come to see, does it make sense? I don't know. We'll find out. 58 Titularis team photo goes for $216 as well. Above that, we have a 48 Zara, a really nice looking Telmo Zara, and goes for around the price that we see some of his rookies go for. We'll see one here in a bit. Then we have a Valderrama 2000 Upper Deck. Speaking of the man himself, we have a Sign of the Times and a PSA 9. So I looked this one up just because, we don't see this type of stuff at all. So I figure, why not? Goes for $222, which compared to recent pricing, there was a best offer of a Raw that did $298. So I would say that $222 on a PSA 9, probably the better deal of the bunch. There was also a Raw that did $127. So it makes sense in regard to those prices. There was a PSA 10 in 2022 that did $431. So, maybe a bit of a discount, or at least maybe a card in 2022 that could be up if it sold now. The real surprising part to me was looking back at the sales sort of whenever this came out, or a little bit after in 2004 here. You can see Carlos Valderrama autos typically going from $20 to $50, and those cards practically had no appreciation all the way until 2017. I mean, some of them, if you bought it for $50, you'd be down 50%, and ultimately, the huge soccer boom allowed these to rise to different levels where you could actually make money on what you paid in 2004. But for a 13-year period, the people that own these cards, presumably they just wanted to own them because they enjoyed the cards. I mean, that's sort of what this is all about. So I'm sure they're not, sweating a $20 loss or whatever it may be. But all that to say that just because you have a playing days auto of someone doesn't mean it's going to go up and people are going to constantly pay more. I mean, this was a playing days auto for a player that, not the hugest of huge stars, but a very notable player and a very niche cult figure in soccer. And, the autos really didn't do anything, and now they're getting some, appreciation. Rightfully so, you could say, but pop 1 of 10, 5 higher goes for $222. Next to it, we have another Franz Beckenbauer auto. This one, higher grade, but I don't like the auto as much. It's kind of hard to see there. It's blending into the background along with his thigh area. Telmo Zara 41, the rookie that we were referencing earlier, this PSA 2 goes for $234. You can sometimes find the full panel of that. Next to it, we have a Jude Bellingham out of 10 from 2022 Gold Mojo, goes for $240 from 2022 Select. We have a Bowman Ricardo Pepi out of 50 gold, not something you see every day. I felt like it was a decent price. Now, it is a pop 1 of 2. I would imagine a decent amount of these are actually graded, considering they went through a huge boom at one point. $240 is still a respectable price for what is not the starter in regards to striker for the USMNT. He's actually been one of the best performing, if not the best performing, throughout the last 3 or 4 years, but he's never really been able to cement himself. And as he sort of did start to cement himself, then Balogun came in and took his place, at least for the time being. So we'll see how that plays out. He did get a hat trick over the weekend for Ajax, so that was probably good timing there on that sale. But above it, yeah, this was the Aquarella I was referencing earlier. I have no clue what happened. PSA 2 for $240 when a PSA 5 went for $216. Now, I will say the eye appeal on the two looks better. I mean, the colors are pretty stunning. The back, when I checked it, didn't look egregious, so maybe someone thinks they can crack and resub. I don't know. But yeah, don't really know what to make of that, but, nonetheless, it's still a data point. Then we have a cool pairing here, 2020 Topps Merlin Heritage Red Messi out of 10, SGC 10, or a Topps Finest Orange Messi from 2018, first year finest. Personally, I feel like it's hard to pass up a red out of 10 Messi and a gem mint grade, so despite the brands, I'd probably take the Heritage Messi, but cool to see them both go there. Above that, a 2023 Lamine Yamal Mojo Chrome. Might be a case hit. I don't know. That's just from my seldom viewing of watching people open up packs. So don't really know, to be honest. I'm not a huge 2020 and beyond guy. It's just so incredibly difficult to keep up with, every year's releases and what new cards are out there that I just prefer to go learn about the older ones. But in due time, there's certainly be ones in Modern that I will enjoy. Next to that, we have a 1998 Xavi PSA 7, the Panini Football. This goes for $264, which, sort of makes sense. 8s have been around $400 or $500 as of late, so $264 on that one is seemingly in line. An Idemar 62 Grinch here, PSA 5 goes for $264, fairly high grade there. I was wondering why this went so high initially. This is a stamp, but it is a signed Pele stamp, so you got that going for you. PSA 3 goes for $276, not all that pricey for a Pele auto, I would say. Next to that, a 72 PSA 2 that goes for $288. Seemingly a pretty good price for a 70s Pele, but it does look pretty cool. I'll give it that. Could be fairly rare, although pop 1 of 2 4 higher doesn't necessarily indicate that to me. PSA 4 Platini here goes for $300. That's a fairly low price, but these, along with the Vanderhoek Cruyff, have gotten a lot of higher graded copies as of late, so they've sort of just been deflating over time. Sort of finding their footing at least a little bit. There will be a PSA 5 that we'll see here in a bit, although I think this one had a really good back compared to the 5. I think this was the better of the two, if I had to be honest. Then moving above that, we have a 46 Nanina Zengele PSA 6 that goes for $300, pop 1 of 1. This is a Hungarian player that helped lead the 38 team to the finals. Also in the Puskás rookie year set notably, so pretty cool to see that. This seemingly not all that great of a price when we look at recent comps. An Authentic did $200, what is this, last year, and then this year we had a PSA 4 do $540, so a PSA 6 doing $300. Not all that great. If you dig into it, maybe some look better than others. Hard to really tell sometimes in vintage, but seemingly not all that strong of a price. In a similar vein, the 92 Del Piero PSA 9 goes for $312. As you can see here, the only 3 comps we have, 2 of them were in 2023 for $2,100, $528, and now $312. Part of why this has gone down so significantly is during this time, a PSA 10 had sold for $1,350. So, tale as old as time, especially in pre-modern, in regard to, low pop, maybe even 1 of 1s, at least for the time being, and a PSA 9 getting supplanted by a 10, and the pricing never really holding up, at least for the most part. It's very rare that it has. Now, of course, that's sort of the case more so for rarer items that still have a pop 1 of 1 in a PSA 9 or whatever it may be. If there's more of them out there, then it's fairly known that there are going to be more. But I do feel like sometimes people are getting burnt sort of paying the, extraordinary premium for a PSA blank of blank higher. Next to that, PSA 4 2002 Kaká. Also look this one up because we don't see it all too often. So $324 on this one. Last PSA 6 was $840, so seemingly that's a softer price. But when we do look back, a PSA 2, that's actually, making it seem even softer. PSA 2 best offer did $375, but it doesn't sell that often. As you can see this year, PSA copies alone, there's only been 3 to sell. A PSA 8 did $4,400 over on Golden. That feels like a really strong price. Generally speaking, in pre-modern stickers, you get a premium from a 4 to an 8, but it's usually not a 13, 14x premium. So, maybe the 8's high, maybe the 4's low. I'm not quite sure which, but that's sort of where it's looking. And this is one that has held on really well since 2022, at least, again, in PSA 8 grade. When you look here in 2022, a PSA 8 did $6,000. Now it does $4,400, so, only down 30% or so. Meanwhile, in 2022, a PSA 4 did $2,500, and now a PSA 4 does $320. So, lower grades getting beaten up quite a bit there. Above that, a Garnacho sticker auto, PSA 10 goes for $336. Fanatics does label this as a 2006 UK Traditions Messi that goes for $336 as well. And then in the same row, we had this Eduardo Pai Paulinho Alcantara, PSA 1 goes for $336. Looks really, really nice. Pop 1 of 3 too higher. It seems like a pretty decent price for the Alcantara, at least compared to some of the ones that I'd see on Total Collection every now and then. Although, you can't get them all that easy all the time. It's sort of, you have to find one, the odd end here and there. So if you pay more at auction and, you're getting it in hand, that's perfectly fine as well. Beyond that, Erling Haaland sticker from 2022 goes for $350. We have a couple Pele's here, a 72 Totable goes for $348, and a Saravan at a PSA 2 that goes for $350. This was the Platini I was talking about earlier. PSA 5 goes for $360. Pretty low price, but I looked at the back and, looks like paper loss sort of here in the 75. That should be fairly bold. It is not. But this and, quite a few other vintage cards that, have questionable removal or at least decent removals at times have just been graded so sporadically, so you never really know what you could get. That could be a PSA 1, PSA 2 on another day. Then we have Merlin Chrome Messi out of 50, goes for $400 there, and a PSA 9. Next to it, a Cafu from 1991, rookie PSA 7 that goes for $396. That struck me as fairly low. A PSA 1, at least as of late, the only ones really to sell this year were 41, 58, and 120, so a 7 at $400 seems like a really, really good deal. When you do look back, though, a 9 sold last year for $1,500, which makes the 7 sort of seem in line. But this was a sticker that just was getting sold in immense quantity in 2022. And as we've sort of gone through 2023 and into 2024, it slowed down quite a bit, especially in high grades. Haven't really seen any this year. Now, maybe that's a factor of people not really wanting to go out and pay that pricing, but, they could very easily send it to auction. Haven't seen a whole lot of them. Here we have a 78 football, Panini France. This is a Roger Mila rookie. Goes for 400. Looked it up because, it's a fun rookie to look up. And in regard to pricing, all-time high price was $660. That being for a PSA 8 earlier this year, PSA 9 in 2021, it did $610. And then 5th highest all-time was the sale we were looking at right there. So, relatively in line, and compared to the boom, not all that much down from where it was. Another 62 Valderrama and Pepi, PSA 5, goes for 408. We have a couple Pod Perdashes here. This is the first, which is Romelu Lukaku. At first, I thought this was somewhat high. Just compared to some other one-of-one Lukakus I've seen. There was a Select one-of-one recently, and, Select has different ones. I get it, but that went for maybe 170. This is a PSA 10, though, so you got to take that into account. Above that, we also have a Sadio Mane one-of-one that I found fairly interesting, because I'd probably take the Lukaku between the two here, especially this being a Bayern kit, Sadio Mane, but also not personally buying either of those, so does my opinion matter? Who knows? 93 Abril, Roberto Carlos, PSA 7, goes for 432. That seems relatively in line to some of the prices we've seen on 8s and 9s, and, I thought it was cool to see Cafu and Roberto Carlos so close. The Cafu is a bit rarer, which I think helps the pricing there, because I don't think that player-wise, collectability-wise, it's a 1-to-1, but when you account for the rarity, it sort of makes sense a bit more. A Stevie G auto from 2013, Topps Premier Gold, PSA 10, goes for nearly 500. Above that, a 67 Ballast Football Pele goes for 468. This is a 61 Fischetti. Not all too familiar with the player and the collecting of said player, but what I understood from the Vintage Discord, link down below if you want to check that out, along with an Instagram post that I caught out there from Grail Gallery, I think that's the name. I just off the top of my head, so I tried. But 1961 here, it's actually apparently a 65 release, so this is not a rookie, and seemingly a pretty steep overpay if you are the buyer. So just throwing that out there for whoever may be involved. This Phil Foden one-of-one goes for 480, and I talked about the one-of-ones down here maybe being high, but at the same time I'd prefer these one-of-ones just purely based on the type of parallel rather than a one-of-one Obsidian blank patch sticker auto. I know it's Phil Foden, it's prospecting, but still. This Panini Football, Maradona, Shilton, Hand of God goes for 500 in a PSA 9. Looked at that, and, the only comps I found were the ones where I had Shilton and Maradona in the listing, so it's mostly Fanatics Weekly, but when we look backward, basically, it seems like a fair price, at least relatively, maybe a little low compared to the 7 that sold earlier this year. A 4 sold for $216, a 5 sold for $125. Seems like a pretty good sale for what is a Pop 1 of 3, none higher. Next to that, 2023 Kylian Mbappe rookie at $500. So we have a Kylian Mbappe auto next to that. We talk about Lamine Yamal all the time, and just to hammer it home even more, there was a time in the hobby that I was around for where Kylian Mbappe didn't have any autos out there. He was just, a hot commodity. Everyone wanted it. It was a fever pitch sort of moment. They released this Topps Chrome PSG set with his first on-card autos. Everyone's going crazy. And now I just sort of casually scroll by these autos and weeklies and don't really care all that much because, they're just available. And if you want them, you probably have them. Initially, it's very unique. It's very cool. But after a while, it does sort of wear, even if it's, an all-time great player potentially. He's already an all-time great World Cup player, but, there's more to a legacy than that, of course. Then we have a 2022 Garnacho stained glass. We have a 62 DS Campos Pele PSA 5 that goes for $588, along with a 61 Lampo Campionato Calcio Pele and an SEC 25 that goes for nearly $600 as well. This row, we continue to see the R9s do fairly low prices, at least compared to where they were in the past. PSA 5 here goes for $630. This Xabi rookie from 2001 Panini Sports Superliga Pop 1 of 1, none higher, of course, since PSA 10 goes for $660. Looked that one up because, of course, you don't see this all too often. And this is the highest price by a good ways of any of the Xabi rookies to sell. Now, of course, it is the rarer sticker, also PSA 10 grade, so you can sort of see why that would make sense. Again, another example of a PSA 9 being sold off in the summer, only to then follow it up by a 10 during the fall, so sort of the way it goes. But this one actually gets a decent premium over the 9. Pele Verlog Auto from 58 goes for $690. We also then have the record, which has been falling a good bit, and a PSA 3 that goes for $720. Neymar 2018 NT Auto Patch goes for $750. This Ronaldinho PSA 4 goes for $780. Look that one up because you don't see it all too often in these auctions. And yeah, man, that was pretty shocking to see a PSA 9 that recently did 13.7. Really high price there compared to the 4 that you're seeing here. Of course, grading premiums are obviously going to be a thing, but a very steep one being had there. Last PSA 2 did 500 just earlier this year, so I would say that this seems like a low price comparatively. But there also was a 6 earlier this year for 1,200, so it's somewhere in the middle, which probably deserves to be the case. A sticker that has sold a lot more than I would have thought. Now maybe it's not this particular one. There's people selling team and whatnot, but there's 188 results. Yeah, I mean, just scrolling through, there are some teams in here. Don't get me wrong. There's some Japanese stuff as well, so it's not all rookies. Some of them are stuck as well, but quite a lot compared to what I would have thought. In this row, you got a trio of golds, the first being a 2020 Stadium Club Chrome Messi Gold out of 50 from the first year of Top Stadium Club Chrome. Jersey number goes for $870 in a PSA 8. Next to it, you have a 2022 FIFA Gold Mojo Cristiano Ronaldo out of 10, PSA 10 that goes for $900. And then finally, a PSA 10 of the 97 Merlin's Premier Gold David Beckham that goes for $900 there. That one's come down a good ways compared to some of the sales we've seen in the past. I'm pretty sure I saw it lingering around like $2K there for a good bit. 900 seemingly fairly low, but these are also still out there in good quantity, maybe not in tens, but you definitely see them raw and in these auctions a lot. I've seen a lot of like BGS 6 through 8.5s going like in droves, like lots of 10 in a lot of these weeklies. So just something to think about, but some good prices there for some golds. Above that, 58 Bremer PSA 5 Pele goes for $900, pop 1 of 1 at 7 higher. Next to it, we have a David Beckham post-playing career out of 10 gold, and then we have a black gold from 2016 Ronaldo out of 25 auto. So, you can almost predict what I'm going to say here, but I mean, come on, like what is this? I have such a fundamental problem with post-playing career cards, because if you're willing to buy any post-playing career card, you're going to buy cards. You're going to buy every card of a player forever with no end in sight. And, Panini, whoever, they're just going to milk you dry. Absolutely dry. And this is a clear-cut example of it where I just don't understand. I know this is out of 10. I know people love gold. I know, autos are a huge thing. This is Cristiano Ronaldo, playing days, Real Madrid. And then next to it, you have a post-playing career AC Milan David Beckham auto. How are they even? They're not even comparable. In no world should these be comparable. Maybe I'm absolutely whiffing here, but I don't think I am. I don't think I'm crazy. The same exact price. I mean, come on. That's a joke. Now, maybe the Cristiano Ronaldo auto goes off sticker. I don't know. It probably does. A lot of his autos do. But, I mean, come on. Also above that, you have this Lionel Messi auto or an Arda Güler auto. So, again, we can do the same thing if we want. This is a 1 of 1, so I at least maybe understand some of it. Maybe, you can convince me in some delusional state to believe you. 2018 Treble World Cup sticker. Love this set, love these sticker autos, but of course the Messis of the time, or at least some of them, doesn't look like a typical Messi auto. Of course, this is the coat hanger version. Coat hanger, not good, at least to my eyes, although this price is actually really good. Like, if this was an authentic Messi auto, I'd be all over it at this price. I own a Ronaldo, I own a Neymar, I want to own a Lionel Messi, but obviously at the same time, when I don't believe it's an authentic auto, it makes it hard for me to want to do that. Next to it, you have a 79 Diego Maradona BVG 8 goes for $990. I didn't look at comps just because BVG is going to be hard to find comps of, but I can practically guarantee that that's a pretty low sale, at least compared to what I see for some other grades. Now, of course, BVG, how do you compare that to PSA? Maybe if you take it down a couple grades compared to PSA, it might, seem fair. But for some reason on this sticker in particular, I feel like BVG always does a decent number compared to what I expect it to. Then we have a 59 Pele. This is a PSA 4 of a sticker, presumably, that I've never seen before. It kind of looks like a puzzle piece almost, or like you're trying to put something together. I'm not quite sure, but it gets 1,000, pop 1 of 1, then higher. I think it's recently graded, or at least somewhat recently graded. Yeah, 89 million. That's pretty recent. So cool to see that go at least, and definitely keep my eye out for more. Beyond that, 2018 Treble Vinny. Initially, I looked this one up because I was sort of going to talk about, Vinny winning the Ballon d'Or and how, his prices haven't done anything. Apparently, he's not even going to win it, which is kind of crazy in and of itself, because I thought that he was sort of, not a runaway, but I thought at least it was moderately clear to me. Guess not so much for the masses, but nonetheless, this goes for the same exact price as the last one that was 2 months ago. It's also the same exact card as the last one, so, make of that what you will. I mentioned that a lot, how we see the trebles sell multiple times before they actually go, again, for the same exact price, and these sold for the same exact price that this one did in April. It's very convenient. But what I actually wanted to talk about with this was how I was sort of, shook that nothing's happened to this price of this card in the last year, despite him having a potential Ballon d'Or season. Earlier in the 2023 season, as you can see here, 1676 in September before things really kick off for him and Real Madrid. Of course, he's still a hype prospect, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's got a lot of things baked in, so the pricing does consider that he's going to do some great things. But then he goes on to have the season he has and presumably become the Ballon d'Or winner until we get the info we did today. And, he's down $500. You're down 30-40% on a guy that just had the best season you could probably ask for. I mean, he didn't end up winning it, of course, but we didn't know that when this sold. We didn't know that when this sold. Probably thought it was going to happen, and betting odds would have said that it would have. But, nonetheless, that sells again. We'll see if it sells, I guess. But I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of an indictment on soccer prospecting from the sense of, the prospects that are big, people already know are big, and they already paid big money on them. And I don't think there are a lot of collectors that are willing to go out there and pony up crazy prices. Crazy prices for the average person to go chase a prospect when, for $1,100, if you wanted to convince yourself this was a Messi auto, you could buy this and save yourself $100. Instead, you're going to go and prospect on Vinny, which, at least I thought looked like a decent buy if he was going to win Ballon d'Or, but I guess not, and we'll see where it goes from here. 79 crack Maradona next to a PSA 4 that goes for $1,100. I thought this was really strong. These and ones and twos typically do, $100, $200, something like that. Like a decent number, a respectable number, but nothing crazy. This 4, really high grade though, pop 1 of 2, none higher, gets a really good number there. We have a green Lamine Yamal auto out of 5 that goes for $1,200, along with a trifecta here of autos with R9, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Pele that goes for $1,200 from Leaf. 1 of 1 Panini Chronicles Treasured Platinum Cristiano Ronaldo patch goes for $1,200. Above that, a Vanderhoek Cruyff goes for $1,400. Look this one up because we don't see it go all that often in this high of a grade. And it was actually up on the last sale, which was kind of surprising because, as you can see before, it was down the last few. So $2,100 back here. It's even worse if you go down further. I mean, $3,000 might have 4. No, $3,700 was the highest. As we can see here, it seems like $1,000 was the lowest, at least in regard to all of the sales that we can find, and this one goes for $400 higher. So, it seems like a little bit of a kickback, especially when you consider that a PSA 9 had sold during the summer for $2,500, and now a PSA 8 selling for $1,500. To me, seems like the PSA 9 might have been a steal at that price then, because super high grades are really hard to come by, even with the higher grades coming out. I mean, 9s, as you can see, still don't sell all that often. I mean, it went from being a pop 3 in 2022 to being a pop 4 in 2024. So, 2 years go by, you only get 1 in the pop. That's not a huge ad. Next to it, we have a freed 1925 Dolar that goes for $14.10. This is, of course, a pretty beaten up, authentic version. As you can see here, I mean, creases across the middle, really beaten up corners. Bottom right is missing a good bit. The back, actually, not as bad as the front, I would say. But gets $1,400. Only comp we have to go off of is this one from earlier this year in the summer that went for nearly $5,000. Yeah, $5,200 there. Of course, this is a much better looking copy, a nice looking one. It does have this sort of teardrop that it's infamously known for, but a much more aesthetically pleasing copy, of course. So I think that $1,400 feels fair. Typically, authentics are probably going to do half the price of a 1, and an authentic of this caliber, probably a little bit less as well. Next to it, you have a green Messi PSA 10 out of 5 from 2022 Select that went for $1,600. It was sort of funny because when I went through the auction the first time, I thought to myself, I was like, man, I feel like a gold Messi from this year would actually do more, because like $1,600 doesn't strike me as all that high for World Cup winning year, has FIFA on the card, all that good stuff. And then spoiler, if we scroll up here, the gold is up here. So it actually adds up. The gold beats the green, which is sort of the thing that I would be led to believe by what I see in the hobby. And I can't say I disagree all that much, because, gold looks really good. Green especially just clashes with so much that being an out of 5 doesn't really strike me all that much, but I also just generally don't like green as a color. But above that, we have a 68 Palarex Cruyff that goes for $1,700. That's around where this has been. This is a eye appeal copy. I think the last one was maybe $1,400 or $1,500, so this is a little bit higher. PSA 9 Monday Chromo goes for $1,740. This is a fair price. Typically, they're around $1,500 to $2,000, so this is right in the middle. 58 Zagallo Pele Vava PSA 7, the floating heads here in really high grade pop 1 of 1 and then higher, goes for $1,800. Pele's face there is on the right, and you get the left half of it. So decent price to pay for half Pele's face, although if you are a set registry chaser, that's actually probably a decent deal considering PSA 7, not all that easy. Above that, Messi Kaboom from 2021, or the Gold Select FIFA Mezzanine out of 10 PSA 10. Take your choice here. Personally, I'd probably go with the gold. I know people like the Kabooms, but the gold here, World Cup winning year, Argentine kid, I think that does a little something for me. This ONB Pele went for $2,200. This actually had sold a month or two ago, so probably a relist. Then it went for $1,600, which felt like a fair price, I guess, because compared to comps, you could say it was really low. You could actually say it was high. So, not a card that sells all too often. Pop 1 of 2, 6 higher. Above that, we have a 67 Sicker Verlag Cruyff PSA 6 that goes for $2,300. Look back at these sales, and it's not all that easy to find high grade sales. And even when you do, you got to go look at the backs, and it's a lot. So looking here, I mean, man, it's hard to find high grade sales. There we go, PSA 7 for $3,800, and this is at the end of 2023. So it seems kind of right in line, I would say. Again, you can look at the backs, make of it what you will. This looks pretty good on the front, but pop 1 of 9, 9 higher. Next to it, we have a 2006 Messi PSA 10 that goes for $2,400. Feels relatively high compared to what we've seen as of late. I feel like those are around $1,500 to maybe a little over $2,000 at times. So this is a decent price there. A 67 Rivellino PSA 5, it goes for $2,500. Doesn't have rookie in the title, and from what I saw in the Vintage Discord, again, link down below, I had heard that there's something prior for him, so seemingly a decent price. Didn't pull up comps, but when you looked at him, it sort of made sense because there are PSA 2s of this same item that sold even recently for as much as like $1,000. So a 5 getting $2,500, at least based on the multipliers and all that good stuff, seems to make sense. And then the second to last row here is a nice trio of Pele's. We have a 58 Montigum PSA 7. We have a PSA 3 Tupanamba from 1958, or 1960, really. Fanatics not keeping up on that. And then we have a 58 Bremer Fockring PSA 8 Pele that goes for $3,300. So take your pick of the bunch here. I know that PSA 8 Bremer Fockring Pele is a super high grade, pop 1 of 3, none higher. Super tough to get at that high grade. The Pele Tupanamba, of course, as we sort of mentioned lately, has been on a pretty steep fall, looking at about $1,000 per grade here, and that seems to hold on to this Tupanamba in particular. And then this Montigum, probably not a fan favorite, but high grade there, pop 1 of 3, 2 higher. And then finally, we get into the top row where it's quite the trio. Probably not the one you'd expect. We do get a Pele, which you probably expect, and even Lamine Yamal you probably expect. But we also have a Sindelar here. So we'll start with the 58 Aquarella Pele PSA 4. It goes for $4,000. This is a fairly low price considering recent comps. It's been lingering between $4,000 to $6,000 for the most part. An eye appeal sticker here getting $4,000, not particularly high. Again, Aquarellas are really tricky because of the perforated borders, whether or not they're stuck and being able to tell. There's just a lot going on. So $4,000 at this point seems to make sense, but of course, as I mentioned before, it has been down a good bit. This Sindelar from 1920s Greenling goes for $4,800 SGC1, pop 1 of 1, 1 higher. Generally speaking, this is one of the attainable pre-war grails. Obviously, as you saw, a pretty decent price behind it, so it's not going to be cheap, but at least it's fairly accessible comparatively to some others. Goes for $4,800. It also has a rarer back from my understanding. When you look at the numbers here at the bottom, sort of in the barcode area, that is not typical. So presumably a little bit of a premium paid there. I'm not sure how much you can attribute to that. When we do look at recent comps, or at least all the comps we can find, actually, this is the highest selling one ever. A PSA 2 sold earlier this year for $4,300. We also had a PSA 1.5 for $3,300, and then before that, $1,900 and $1,600. So a really strong price here. Again, how much of that is attributed to the rarer back, I'm not sure, but seemingly a pretty good sale there for a player that is amongst one of the more collectible in pre-war. Not a ton of releases either, and gets a pretty strong price there. Finally, blowing everything out of the water by a long shot is this Lamine Yamal 1 of 1 Topps Merlin Variation Superfractor. Goes for $20,400. So looking at some comps, I mean, the only thing you can really compare to is 1 of 1s of Lamine Yamal from his rookie year. So as you can see, the top ones are mostly autos. When we look here, we have the Topps Chrome Superfractor, which, if we're being honest, Topps Chrome, sort of the release Superfractor as well. 1 of 1 auto, all the good stuff you want. Continuing that forward, Topps Chrome here, 1 of 1 auto. You have another Topps Finest beneath that, another Topps Finest. And then you have a National, which, I'm not big on National stuff. I know it's 1 of 1, all that but, you know, national releases, I mean, come on. Prize Footballers, 1 of 1 here, goes for $28,000. The Topps Chrome Superfractor, I guess it says Topps Chrome, but this is Topps Finest, goes for $25,000. A Topps Now 1 of 1 went for $21,000. So, like, do I like this more than a Topps Now? You know, probably. Talking about this 1 of 1 in particular, typically I'd prefer a base as opposed to an image variation, so I do think that has something going against it. Also being Topps and not Topps Chrome, I wonder about that. But seemingly a good price, and probably one that was deserved, because honestly, if you look here, I mean, once you start getting in the 10 to 20,000, there's not many 1 of 1s that you're going to find. Like this Topps Finest is here, but this is an insert, and, you know, sort of makes sense. Inserts are going to do less than the base / variations. But the mania continues, and he tops the weekly by a large margin. Not to say he shouldn't. I mean, honestly, any prospect 1 of 1 nowadays, especially with the excitement for modern soccer, is going to do a huge number, and I totally understand it. But that's going to do it for this week. We'll take a peek at next and see what we got going. Looking ahead, a couple Peles here to top it off. A 65 Crack Golazo PSA 3, pretty good grade there. A Titularis and a 2, another Lamine Yamal Topps Chrome Gold Auto. This Master Vending PSA 3 Pele, along with a 62 Flammable Pele. PSA 10 Mbappe Rookie. In addition to that, a TAA 1 of 1, an out of 5 Merlin Lamine Yamal. Got a nice Veggie Garincha, a Jamal Santos Rookie, and some good stuff scattered in between for sure. But that's going to be it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed. Again, if you did, make sure to leave a like. I'd appreciate it greatly. Anything you want to tell me or others, maybe something you thought sold high or low, love to see in a comment down below. And if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.